Um, Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Sherry Box month. Um, Holy shit! Finally, we've been talking about Sherry Box for a long time, ever since the beginning of the wine club. But it's finally. I don't know why it's taking me so long to put a box together around this, but I finally decided to pull the trigger. So super excited. In case you did not know, I fucking love sherry. So super excited to talk about it all this month. People have these kind of real misconceptions about sherry in the States. People think there's that kind of that dusty bottle in the back of your grandma's cupboard. That's like kind of sweet, like a cream sherry that's poured in Christmas, or people think it's like just a cooking wine. But the truth is, sherry is a real wine. It's a real thing. In fact, it's one of the world's greatest wine traditions. Really rich history. It's a living artifact of essentially like 3,000 years of winemaking, dating all the way back to Roman times and before. So it's the most kind of misunderstood as well as undervalued categories, probably because it's so misunderstood. Just amazing bang for your buck for amount of quality of wine that you get for the dollar is, and it's really hard to argue against it. So, hopefully we're gonna fix all of that misconception, or at least I'm gonna try this month, and hopefully we'll have a few converts by end of the month. That's my hope. At the minimum, at least you understand what sherry is, even if you don't like it, which is fine. Not everybody has to have the same palate and like it, but at least you understand what it is and respect it for what it is. And I think that's my aim this month. So, but I'm particularly excited to kind of kick it off this month with this bottle, which is what we're tasting today. You'll see pretty much all sherries are non-vintage, meaning it's blended across multiple vintages, and we'll talk about that, why that is in a second. But we are right here. It's just M. Aunt della Riva. By the way, that's Manuel Antonio della Riva is the name of the original guy who founded this estate. But somehow, because it's, I guess, too long to write on the label, it's M. Aunt della Riva. Miraflores, Baja, Manzanilla, Fina is what we have today. I know that's a lot of mouthful, but we'll break it down and see what that means. But before we get into the wine and all of that, just want to make a few announcements. So for those of you we do have some new rookies that are joining us this month. You're seeing them right there, Sam and Annie. It's Lisa and Whitney who played excellent ambassadors of the wine club, and then somehow recruited them out in Silver Spring. So welcome, first and foremost. Just a few announcements. Since this is your first time meeting me, my name is pronounced Un. It's Un, authentically saying it in Korean with a G at the end. But over the years of people butchering my name, the silent W, also that made the G silently progressively more silent. So it's like Un, like a moon without the M, spoon without the SP, soon without the S. You pick your pick. But that's not how you pronounce my name. Here at Six Wine Club, it's just two ground rules here, just in the interest of keeping the space feeling safe and fun for everyone. One is if you have any questions, because the way it's structured is that first hour is kind of like the regular programming or teaching hours where I'm going to break it down and we're going to get a little geeky about the wine. I'm going to do producer profile. We'll taste the wine through the grid and we'll know what that means when we'll get there. So we do all of that in an hour. But just in case that, just to make sure that we keep that going, keep that under an hour. If you have any questions, I ask that you hold on to those questions, either put it in the chat box or hold on to those questions until you are prompted for Q&A. The second ground rule is, in the interest of keeping the space feeling safe and fun for everyone. We're all adults with a different backgrounds, belief system. We're going to be drinking wine and talking about a bunch of stuff afterwards. Sometimes some things may be said that you may find offensive, or you may say something that offends somebody else. And that's okay. That's human nature. I want all of you to show up authentically as yourselves. But when those things are pointed out to me, we're going to address that as a group. That's just to make sure that we're all safe, and also know that it's all coming from a place of love and respect. It's not coming from a place of a censorship or scolding. But yeah, just in the interest of keeping it all safe and fun for everyone, just know that if anything was reported to me, that we're going to talk about that as a group. So, but that's about it. That's the only two real ground rules here at 6 Foot Wine Club. It's not some stuffy ass real formal wine tasting that we're gonna do. So, it's Wednesday, it's hump day. Pour yourself a fat ass glass of wine. Get a little hopped up. Make some bad decisions tonight. Your week will be more fun that way. For those of you who are vets and the rookies, you are also more than welcome to participate as well. But Case Club will go live tomorrow. So Case Club is a perk program that we do here at 6 Foot Wine Club. At the beginning of each month, you have an opportunity to purchase all the wines from the previous month. So all the wines that you tasted, as well as some wines that I really liked but did not make it into the box for one reason or another. I'll feature them on the Case Club. So yeah, it's just a way for you to buy more. The whole idea is to buy more. You buy, the cheaper it becomes per bottle. Is the idea. But anyways, so next month on tomorrow, Case Club of last month's wine, which was all, what did we do last month? I can't even remember. The Glue Glue liter box. So all the Glue Glue liter box bottles that we did last month. If you are, I know you haven't tasted those from last month, obviously, but if you want to participate, you're more than welcome to do so as well. Email will go out, and then it will have all the instructions on what to do. Cool. Any questions about any of that logistics and whatnot before we get started with the wine? Perfect. Perfect. Just out of curiosity, just a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with sherry? Or like you drink sherry regularly, or you like sherry? Allison actively does not like sherry. Okay, excellent. Beautiful. You're just gonna love this.
Kevin says you're gonna change my mind this month.
All right. Maybe we will.
But I don't know. I've never had a sherry that I liked.
Okay.
There was that sherry bar on 7th and Shaw.
Mockingbird?
And it closed within a year of me moving to DC, and I'd been there a couple times and I really liked it, and I was looking forward to learning more about it. Then it became the themed Game of Thrones, pop-up bar things. So
yeah, Chantal Seng, who was the owner and bartender of that place, is kind of a foremost sherry expert in DC for sure. Seek her out if you guys are curious about. I mean, she's a really amazing person to begin with, but particularly she knows a lot about sherry, so definitely a bit of an expert in that area. But yeah, cool. I mean, this is exactly why I wanted
sherry bender. I had one sherry bender in Madrid when I met these chefs at a bar, and they took me to this weird tobacco-soaked sherry bar, and we drank sherry for a couple hours, and it kind of opened my eyes. But that was the only time.
I like sherry. I can't say I've had a lot though.
Okay.
But I like fortified wine too, in general.
Perfect. I also never thought I was going to hear the term sherry bender. I never thought I was going to hear sherry and bender together, but you know what? I mean, I suppose it could have. But anyways.
It didn't work out for anyone.
Yeah, I mean, these are all fortified wines, which means the alcohol's pretty high. So the bender on sherry could be something. But well, good. I mean, this is the whole point. This is why I kind of wanted to do it. Why I was excited about doing the sherry box. It's really, not only do I love it, but it's like there's so much mystery around it, and hopefully this month we can demystify some of that. All right, cool. Let's start with a map because that's what we always do. All right, here we go. So, in case you didn't know, sherry. Oh, also, I wanted to say, and this goes for you particularly, Allison. For those of you who've had sherry or I don't really like sherry, I highly recommend, more than any other month. I mean, in general, I always say this, but more than any other month, for this month, please have some sort of food pairing. Even simple Manchego cheese or some sort of sheep milk cheese, to if you like ham, if you're a meat eater, having some like, hamon or something, Marcona almond, something that makes these wines make so much more sense when it's paired with food. Again, I say that in general with wine, but particularly with sherry, these things make just so much more sense with a little
I
bites of food.
I have garlic potato chips.
Perfect. Anything salty, exactly, salty, fried like that, especially with today's wine, that's exactly which one. All right, so in case you didn't know, sherry comes from Spain. It's a Spanish wine. So here's a map of Spain, right? These are all kind of different winemaking regions within Spain, but where we are is in the south. We're in Andalusia region of Spain, in the southern tip, the far south. This is essentially kind of like the agricultural belt. Basically, this is like a central valley of California, of US, of Spain, essentially. Like all the produce for the rest of the country, really, a lot of it is grown in this part of the country. And as you can imagine, it is very hot. It's warm, super sunny, very hot. It is humid, very, very humid in certain parts. It's also very Mediterranean. So on the bottom part, a lot Malaga, it's very Mediterranean. It gets quite dry. But as you come up on the Atlantic coast, along the Sanlúcar de Barrameda, where we are this week, it gets quite humid. In fact, it's like 60-70% humidity all year round, that kind of humidity. And we'll talk about how that humidity plays a huge role in defining the style of the wine that we're drinking today. So anyways, so we're in Andalusia, but particularly where we are is right here, this little corner right here. So if you look a little more closely to that region, so if you look here, there's Jerez. By the way, just to kind of, yeah, this is where Sevilla or Seville is. This is Malaga, obviously, right? But where we are is around the town of Jerez. So when you look closely here, this is where we're at. This basically 3 cities right here: Jerez, Sanlúcar de Barrameda, and El Puerto de Santa Maria or Santa Maria. These 3, obviously, there are different communes of production, right? Like Chipiona, Trebuena, Lebria, all these different places, they make sherries. But really, the main production of sherry comes from these 3 cities or around it. It's called Sherry Triangle or the Marco de Jerez. It's kind of like champagne. For it to be called sherry, or real sherry, it has to be made in this region around the town of Jerez. Jerez is the biggest town. It's the inland capital, obviously much more inland than, let's say, Sanlúcar. And by the way, this map is a little misleading. So this blue area right here, so here's the Atlantic Ocean on the left. And this kind of light blue area, this is all inland. This is not water. This is what they're calling marisma, which is basically like a swampland. It's like a mud flat, essentially, is what these are. Albaritzas, is this white part, is a type of soil. This very porous, chalky soil. And we're going to look at pictures of that in a second. That's what these are. And essentially, that's what defines the soil type of sherry. And then the zona de viñedos, these are the green areas are where the vineyards are. So as you can see some of it, and then barros arenas, barros means clay, arenas means sand. So these are kind of, these 3 are essentially what define soil types of sherry regions: albarizas, barros, and arenas. But really what we're talking about is albarizas, this really chalky kind of soil. It's kind of like a Côte de Fonte in Champagne, very chalky, heavy soil. But here is even more porous. And then we'll talk about what that does to the wine and then grape varieties or grapevines in a second. But yeah, just know that this is what it is. And then these 3 are essentially kind of the major, Sanlúcar and Santa Maria and Jerez. These 3 are like the major production points of sherry. So just to talk a little bit more. So today, by the way, we're in Sanlúcar de Barrameda. Anytime you see the word Manzanilla on the sherry label, that it can only come from Sanlúcar de Barrameda. But you've probably heard of Jerez more. because it is the biggest city. So Jerez is the inland capital, largest city. It's about 200,000 people. Home of the great historic bodegas like Gonzalez Vallas, Williams and Humbert. Those all the kind of big, large, Lustal, Hidalgo, all these big names in sherry. They're all pretty much centered around the town of Jerez. It's much hotter, drier, more continental, meaning it's really hot in the summertime, really cold in the wintertime. The floor yeast, which we'll talk about in a second as well, thins out in the brutal kind of summer heat here. And then in the winter, it comes back. So the wines here just stylistically tends to be a little bit fuller, nuttier, and more oxidative. And we'll talk more about this in a second, but floor is this kind of yeast layer that forms on top of the wine and keeps the wine from coming in contact with the oxygen. So as it dies out in the summertime, because it gets too fucking hot, the wine starts to oxidize a little bit. That's why the wine style here from Jerez, the Fina style sherries, tends to get a little bit fuller, a little bit nuttier, a little bit more oxidative. Now, you go to El Puerto de Santa Maria down here. Well, let's actually talk about Sanlúcar de Barrameda first, which is where we are today. So northernmost point of these three triangles is right on the coast. So as you can see, this is the Atlantic Ocean, and then this is the big river, the Rio Guadalquivir, that comes through here. It's right at the mouth of it. So in fact, this is where Magellan departed from here on the first kind of circumnavigation on the globe in 1500s. It says from this port right here. Anyways, the most maritime of the three towns. So it's much cooler, it's much more humid with a nearly constant kind of Atlantic sea breeze coming in. So the wine here tends to be much lighter, a lot more finesse, a lot more elegant. There's also, this is also scientifically shown, but there's a lot of higher mineral content in the wine here, and there's actually higher salt content in the wine here. And a lot of that people believe is because of the actual Atlantic breeze that comes in here, carries some of that ocean breeze and ocean salt, and then it kind of comes through on the wine. So the wine here tends to be much lighter and then noticeably saltier. And Santa Maria down here is essentially kind of like the baby in between. It kind of splits the difference between the style of Sanlúcar de Barrameda and Jerez. But these three, again, the sherry can be made in different parts, like Chircana down here, San Fernando, Chipiona, but really these three are the main towns. And stylistically, Jerez is the nuttier, fatter, more oxidative. Sanlúcar is much more elegant, lighter, saltier, and then Santa Maria kind of divides the difference between these two. So let's talk more about Albaritza soil, which is here. So yeah, sorry. So this is a soil. As you can see, it's quite white. The entire kind of Marco de Jerez is blanketed in Albaritza, porous white chalky soil. Like I mentioned, it kind of looks like a dry plaster, but it behaves like a sponge. It's very, very porous. So it sucks up all the water. These soils are up to 60 to 80% calcium carbonate, which is ancient compressed marine sediment from this region, because Andalusia used to be under the ocean back in the days. Albaritza's superpower is that it absorbs that large amount of quantity, the porous quality that I was talking about. So it rains in the wintertime in this region, and then it soaks up all of that and compacts on the surface in the summer heat, and then it kind of bakes and it forms this really hard crust on the top in the summertime heat, and then it traps all the moisture from the below. So despite it being super hot here and the surface being really dry because of the heat, all the moisture stays on the bottom, and then these vines have to dig really deep because it's porous. It goes all the way down very deep. So the vines have to dig, the roots have to dig like 6 to 8 meters deep to get to water and the nutrients for them to survive. And as we all know, when the vines struggle, they often tend to make much better wines. So all that deep water stress is essentially what gives these vines and then the wines here that kind of concentration, complexity, and then the fine quality in the wine. Here's another kind of picture of, this is actually Jerez, one of the hills in Jerez. So as you can see, like, look at how white it is. Like, you can just look around and see how white and chalky it is. So this is how much chalk is in the content of the Albaritza soil. Having said all of that, not all Albaritza is created equal. There are different subtypes of Albrisa, yielding different kind of wine characters. So Del Riva's Manzanilla, this particular one that we're tasting tonight, comes from a Miraflores Baja vineyard. So this is also a single vineyard sherry, which is a pretty rare thing. So oftentimes all the kind of different vineyard, there's not this idea of terroir, right? Like the French talk about the sense of place of a vineyard, particular place. It's much less so here. Everything just kind of gets blended, and a lot of the style is about the kind of the aging process, less about the actual vineyard site. But of course, there are people who are exploring these different subsoil types of Albrisa, different particular aspects or characters of different vineyards. And then this is one of those. So this is actually a single vineyard sherry that comes from Miraflores Baja vineyard, which is one of the actually central vineyard in the San Luis de Barrameda region. So anyways, we've talked a lot about the region. So let's actually talk about the sherry itself, what sherry exactly is. So sherry is anytime you hear the word sherry, by the way, the Spanish government did not do a very good job like champagne did. Earlier, I kind of used I compare sherry to champagne. But champagne did an excellent job of protecting their name champagne, right? So like unless it comes from champagne, you cannot call it legally champagne. And people have gotten into legal trouble over calling something champagne, right? Well, unfortunately, the Spanish government has not done as good of a job. So you'll oftentimes find the word sherry written on bottles. They're California sherry producers, like this kind of a sweet kind of bulk wine thing that comes out. And legally, they don't have any ground to sue them because there's no name for sherry. But because we are all very educated and savvy wine consumers here at 6 Foot Wine Club, now we know when we say real sherry, what we're talking about is a fortified wine made from Palomino Fino grapes. There are some other minor grapes that are allowed in there, like Muscat, Muscat de Alejandría, Pedro Jimenez, which comes from a neighboring region. But mostly what we're talking about is Palomino Fino, also called Listan Blanco in the Canary Islands. We've had great wines from made from Listan Blanco from Canary Islands, but it's the same grape, Palomino Fino. So it's a fortified wine made from Palomino Fino grapes, grown in the Marco de Jerez region, aged in a fractional blending system called Solera. That's what sherry is. And I do not expect you to remember what that is or understand what all of those things mean. So we're going to go through that this month. So what fortified means, what fractional blending means, and what Solera means. So first, let's start with fortified. So most wines that we know are the dry still wines that we drink are not fortified. Whenever you hear the word fortified, it means spirit, which is a unfermented product. So you take the wine or beer and you distill it. It's a distilled product, and that's a spirit. So anytime you add the spirit to the wine, that's called fortification. So sherry, most sherries has brandy, essentially spirit added to it. Back in the days, it used to be much harder to ripen the grapes to this level. So that's why people have to add brandy to get it up to that alcohol level. These days, with the global warming and just generally with a better agricultural development, people can actually farm their grapes with enough sugar that naturally it will get up to this level of alcohol fortification or alcohol level that you need to develop floor and develop sherry. So there are sherries that are unfortified. And the Spanish government does allow that to happen, but there's a minimum alcohol percentage that you have to hit depending on what style it is. But in general, when you're talking about sherry, just know that it's oftentimes a fortified wine. Like majority of the time, we're talking about like 95% of the time, it's a fortified wine. The unfortified sherry is a very, very rare thing. It only happens like certain vintages when it's super warm and whatnot. But oftentimes, it's essentially what we're talking about is a fortified wine. So, and we'll cover a fractional blending system called Solera in a second. But I also, having said all of that, right, because we're talking about Solera and blending and aging, all of that, I gotta admit that sherry is probably the furthest departure from what we usually talk about here at a 6 Foot Wine Club, which is a natural wine club. This idea of natural wine, minimal interventionist wine, right? Well, sherry is the almost opposite of that. This is like the maximal intervention wine, right? Like without human intervention, sherry does not happen. So, this is where the kind of human Venus ingenuity and engineering kind of creates one of this like most unique, delicious styles of fine wine in the world. So technically, I guess I cannot call this a natural wine, but it's a lot about, like I've always touted, it's a lot about transparency. A lot of these producers that all the producers that we're featuring this month are all excellent fine. That they all have the same common philosophy of excellent wines are first and foremost made in the vineyard, then in the cellar. So they kind of embrace all of that. So in that sense, there's a common thread. But in terms of actual interventionist method, there's a lot of intervention that has to happen for wine to go from Palomino Fino grapes to sherry, just so you know. All right, so let's talk about Palomino Fino just for a second. It covers 95% of Jerez vineyards, if not more. So it's pretty much all the vineyards in Jerez region is essentially Palomino Fino. And it kind of makes, if you ever have it on its own, it makes this kind of like a dull, very neutral, low acid white wine. And that's actually not a flaw. It's actually by design. Like I mentioned, a lot of sherry's characteristic comes from the aging, like the interventionist style intervention. So it's high sugar, low acid, neutral aromas, all of that by design, and that's what they want. They want you to start with something neutral so they can impart all the effects of aging onto the wine rather than having to fight against aromas or different kind of natural characteristics of the grape variety. So the base wine, if you ever have the base wine of sherry, is rather kind of boring. And oftentimes these days, they end up actually acidifying the wine a little bit just to give more acid by using tartaric acid. So again, very interventionist wine. I'm not talking about the natural one that we normally talk about here. Anyway, so in order to make sherry, you harvest Palomino Fino grapes, right? And then you got to make the base wine. And this is like any other wine. So you bring the grapes in early September, you press it gently, and then the first juice goes into, back in the days, traditionally, it was first in an amphora, which is a gigantic clay jars. And then it moved on to American oak barrels, the 600-liter American oak barrels. And then these days, in the modern days, almost all of sherry, very first base wine is made in a temperature-controlled stainless steel tank. So the first wine is made, and that's just like baking any other white wine. So take it off the skins, you put it in a stainless steel tank, and then you let it ferment. And then that comes out to about 11 to 12% alcohol in ABV. And then at that point, like I mentioned, that base wine is very kind of neutral, thin, kind of unobjectionable, just like a typical white wine. And from there, basically the wine gets fortified, or some of them don't get fortified, but most of them get fortified. But then it goes under, whether it goes the floor aging, biological aging, which is aging under the layer of floor, which is a yeast layer that forms, or it ages oxidatively, meaning just exposed to oxygen. Those are the two paths for this base wine to go on. And the winemaker has to make a decision at that point of which wine is going to go where. So let's talk a little bit about floor before we talk more about how they determine which way they go. So here, all right. You see this kind of white layer on top of the wine? So this will be the base wine, and then now it's aging, and then this is what happened on top. This white thing is floor, is what's called floor. This is what it looks like. After fermentation, the base wine is placed into a 600-liter American oak barrels, which is what you see right here. Filled only about 5/6 full, which is what you see here, leaving a headspace of air above the wine. This is where the miracle kind of happened, this floor right here. Floor is a naturally occurring film of indigenous Saccharomyces yeast that spontaneously kind of colonizes the surface of the wine and forms this like thick beige cauliflower-like mat. It's basically essentially like a living lid And as you can imagine, this also the way floor survives that it actually needs oxygen from above, and it actually starts to metabolize the alcohol, glycerin, and the acetaldehyde is inside the wine, like volatile acidity that's inside this wine, and then that's how it survives. And by it being here, as you can imagine, this wine underneath is completely cut off from the oxygen. So this ages without any touch to oxygen in a complete anaerobic environment. The floors of survival requires the alcohol between 14.5 to 15.5%. If the alcohol gets too low, so below the 14.5%, then the bacteria comes in and invades the wine. And if it's too high, then the yeast dies out, the floor dies off. So initially, why people fortify that base wine, right? 11.5 to 12% base wine is to get it up to that 14.5 to 15.5% ABV, so they can create this environment where floor can form. And then, like I mentioned, it needs the glycerol for nutrition and the right temperature and humidity. And this is why location is everything here in sherry. So in Jerez, summer temperatures can exceed 40 degrees Celsius. The floor thins out, partially dies in July and August, like I mentioned. The wine breathes some oxygen, like I mentioned. So imagine this dies off in the summertime. Now it gets exposed to oxygen, so it gets a little bit fuller, a little bit more oxidative. And in Sanlúcar, where we are in the Manzanilla, the year-round Atlantic humidity and cooler, stable temperature keep the floor thick and active for 12 months a year. So this stays around for the entire year in Sanlúcar de Barrameda, because where we are, the kitchen location, the wine becomes much, it does not encounter any oxygen whatsoever. So stylistically, it becomes much lighter, it's more delicate, more saline, and just kind of more purely biological expression of the sherry style. And that's part of the reason why I personally like the Manzanilla style. They're both Fino sherries, meaning they're both been biologically aged under the floor, a veil of floor the entire time. But the Manzanilla just tends to be, I like the salty tang, as well as that really delicate style of sherry. But it's not that one is better than the other, but it's just a stylistically, it's all different. And a lot of that is just because the location, really. Like the process-wise is exactly the same. You get up to that 45 to 14.5 to 15.5%. But because of where they are in the kind of natural environment, the way it ages is completely different. So at this point, the fortification decision is made. The after base wine is assessed. The winemaker makes a critical decision based on the wine's character. So wine destined for Fino and Manzanilla, they are fortified up to 14.5% to 15.5%, like I mentioned, just enough alcohol to stabilize the wine and then keep the floor alive. And then wines that are destined for Oloroso, which we have a bottle of in this month. We're going to talk about that in 2 weeks. But we're going to start talking about next week as well. They are actually fortified all the way up to 17% and plus, which kills off floor. The floor can survive at that alcohol level, so they fortify up to 17%. Because the whole point of Oloroso is to age this wine under oxygen, rather than Fino style, which is to age it under veil of floor. So the Oloroso is very kind of a certain. When they decide they're going to make Oloroso, they essentially fortify up to 17.5%, kills off the floor, everything just oxidizes and ages. When it's Fino and Manzanilla, it's a little more tricky because now even here it gets developed into different styles afterwards, where they let it set, and then some of these barrels where the floor will die off, and so half of it or some percentage of it, portion of it will age under the floor, and portion of it will age oxidatively. Those are called amontillado, which is a style that we're going to taste next week. There's also Palo Cortado, which is actually halfway through the aging under the floor. They'll intentionally pour more brandy, jacking up the style, the alcohol percentage, killing off the floor. So that's called Palo Cortado. So there's all these different sub-styles within Fino that exist with a biological aging. But so there's a huge kind of difference between the Oloroso oxidative aging and biological aging, and those are kind of two paths that sherries take. So the sherry style spectrum from kind of a driest going all the way up. So the first one is a Fino style, which is a Manzanilla. It can only come from Sanlúcar de Barrameda. It's bone dry, biological aging only, exclusively from Sanlúcar. It's right around like 15.5%. Fino comes from a Jerez region, again, bone dry, biological aging only from Jerez or El Puerto de Santa Maria, slightly fuller than Manzanilla, almond, kind of like doughy, a little bit of nutty things. And then we talked about amontillado, palo cortado, oloroso. We're going to talk about that in the coming weeks. But for this week's purpose, what we have is Manzanilla. So know that this is a completely biologically aged sherry, meaning it was aged under this layer veil of Fino the entire time that it's been in the barrels. So now, by the way, I know this can be very confusing. Sherry is particularly sherry with the production method can get kind of confusing at first, but a lot of it, if you have any questions, make sure that you put it in the chat box and we'll try to address it at the end. So let's talk about the aging system. And in order for you to understand sherry, we're going to come back to this quite a bit this month, but basically, in order to understand sherry, you got to understand Solera system. And this is what Solera looks like. So I mentioned that you make the base wine, you fortify it up to 14.5, 15% to encourage the development of flora if you want to make phenol sherry, right? So you do that, and then phenol sherry forms, and that's when you put right here and the very first grader. So this is what Solera. Okay, so let me try that. So this is what Solera looks like, and then what Solera is a Spanish fractional blending system. So how this wine works is that all the wines that we drink, so this bottle as well as any other sherry bottles that we drink, they're pulled from this one layer, which is a group of barrels. They're on the last layer. You can only pull, like let's say for each liter that you take out from each barrel, you have to leave at minimum 2 liters behind. So you cannot just empty out this bottle and fill it all, bottle it and sell it off. By law, you are prohibited from doing that. So if let's say you take out 1 liter from here, 1 liter from here, 1 liter from here, you blend it all and then you bottle it. And that's called saca. Saca in Spanish means to take out. So saca just means that when you bottle, it's to think of it as a bottling. So a lot of producers, this producer, they only do 1 saca per year. So each year they only bottle once. And they're essentially pulling a little bit from every barrel, most aged one on the top, and then they bottle it. And then the rest, that 1 liter that's pulled out, has to get filled from the year before barrel, and then this goes in and it fills up the rest, fills up the rest, fills up the rest, and it's called Rocio. And then what's left behind here gets filled from the year before, and so on and on. It goes up. And then basically the very new wine, that year's vintage's wine, gets filled in a level called Sobretabla, which is the newest fortified wine. So this is right after the wines get fortified to 14.5% or 15% in case of phenol or biologically aging sherry, or in case of Oloroso after 17.5% or 18%. By the way, Oloroso and the phenol sherries, they essentially have their own Solera systems because, as you can imagine, they cannot be blended together, right? Because if one has floor, the other one doesn't, you cannot blend it across. So this kind of a Solera blending, fractional blending system exists for phenol and they exist for Oloroso. They're not combined together. So in case of phenol in Manzanilla, in this wine's case, essentially what happened was that they put the wine in here after they make the base wine 11 to 12%. They fortify it up to 14.5%, 15%, and then they put it in here. Floor forms, and by minimum aging, you have to age it for 2 years at this level. And then, you know, obviously there are older ones that have it, and then they just get filled and filled and filled until it comes out in the bottle. It's essentially how this blending fractional system or fractional blending system works. And this is called Solera. This can be as few as 3 to 4 criaderas, which are these levels, or there are houses that have as many as like 14 or 15 criaderas that fill this out. So it all kind of depends on which house and what they do. But as you can imagine, and this is why all sherries are not vintage, because you're essentially blending vintages across each year. So the last bottle that you get, whenever you pull from it, there's some portion of that wine that was a very original, very first wine that went into the wine. So there's some old sherry houses where there are 100-year-old wines that has been flowing through their Solera system, and some of it is in the last final Criadera. So that's why you cannot really know how long, it's not like the regular wine where there's a vintage. I'm like, this is 20 years old, 25 years old, but every wine has some level of every wine that's come before it that has ever been put into a Solera system. You have a fraction of that in the wine that you're drinking. So even though this wine, the vintage wise, I don't know when this new wine was came in, but the last one, there's probably at least 20-year-old wines that are in there. So yeah, this is part of the reason why also sherry, in my opinion, has some of the highest bang for your buck age quality ratio to dollar, because you are getting some of these really old wines and you get all these tertiary notes and then the effects of aging on your wine and tasting, yet the price is not as high as somebody who held on to this one barrel for 25 years and bottled it just because they can afford to do this for 3 years. So I know that's maybe a little hard to wrap your head around right now, but we're going to visit this quite a few times this month. So, I just want to introduce this idea of Solera system. All right. So finally, just want to talk quickly about Manzanilla. So basically, anytime you see Fino sherry and Manzanilla, they're essentially the same thing. The only difference is the Manzanilla has to come from San Luca de Barrameda, we talked about, right on the coast, because all that salty humidity, less heat, it's cooler. All of that makes it a much more elegant style. And then the Fino comes from Jerez or the Santa Maria region. But because it's so much hotter and much more inland, the floor dies off during summertime. So the wine tends to be a little bit more oxidative, a little bit fatter, a little bit nuttier. So there's the only difference, but in terms of what the base wine is and how it's made, it's exactly the same. It's all Palomino Fino. It goes to the same kind of a production method. It's just that Chile, because of location, you see the huge difference between those two wines. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Any questions? I know this is a lot that I just went over, and I know it can get very confusing. So any questions about any of that before we get into who makes the
what happens to that layer of yeast? Does it get into the other wine, or does it stay around for 20 years?
So in case of Fino or Manzanilla, it stays around the entire time. So so if this is a Fino Solera system, there will be floor in every barrel one of these. And if the floor dies off in the middle of it, that barrel will be taken out, and then that's where the Amontillado style is born, which is the one that we're going to taste next week, which is that kind of halfway between Fino and Oloroso. But if you're getting this Fino, if you're drinking Fino, if you look at the Solera of the Fino, it will all have the floor in it. And each year when it runs out of the nutrients, it gets replenished from the Criadera before. So there will be floor in every barrel. It sticks around the whole time. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Okay,
from the
cool.
map, it looked like it was all low altitude growth. Is it?
Yeah, generally we're not talking about high altitude lines. There are some hills that run through here. There'll be obviously, like even here, there'll be different aspects, different slopes. So yeah, rolling hills, but this is not a very mountainous, high elevation area. Any other questions? Cool. Let's talk about who makes this wine. This is also a cool story. So it's these two gentlemen. So Willie Perez and Ramiro Ibanez. Ramiro Ibanez is the gentleman on the left, and Willie Perez is the gentleman on the right. So This is a cool story. This is a resurrection story. So, like I mentioned, M. Ant de la Riva is short for Manuel Antonio de la Riva.
And I don't. We can't see anything on our screen. Just FYI.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Can you see now? Yep. So, gentleman on the left is Ramiro Ibanez. General on the right is Willie Perez. So this is a resurrection story. Manuel Antonio de la Riva was founded, he founded a bodega in 1858 in Jerez. It was a really, really well-respected, it's a small producer, but really well-respected producer, known for kind of connecting even before it was popular. Now this has become a thing in sherry, and a lot of people are going out doing single vineyards and really exploring just that concept of terroir in Jerez, right? But in 1858, that wasn't the case. You know, everything was kind of being blended. Most sherry was kind of an anonymous kind of a bulk wine. You pull grapes from different places and you make it you go through the solar system and you make it. But this guy, Manuel Antonio de la Riva, he was all about connecting its wines directly to like specific bagos, which is their local dialect for vineyards, at a time when nobody else was doing that. But in the early 1970s, the company bodega was acquired by the giant Pedro Domecq, which is a huge sherry producer, and it was slowly absorbed into the industrial kind of a basically machine. The brand name survived on paper, but the wine ceased to exist as a nothing distinct. Eventually, Jim Beam brand, Beam Global, which acquired Domecq, left the name completely gathering dust and didn't do anything with it. Then here comes Willie Perez and Ramiro Ibanez. So Willie Perez, born in 1982, so he's 43 years old, is the son of Luis Perez, which is a enology professor and legendary winemaker in Sherry region. He kind of witnessed what happened with the De La Riva brand, or the house of wines before they were kind of blended completely away and lost into oblivion. And even though they were like the first one to really explore the site-specific wines, and it just became a industry norm, just kind of a big commercial bulk sherry. So he now runs his father's Luis Perez in Jerez, but he works as a kind of a researcher and an educator as much as a winemaker. He's kind of obsessed with that idea of connecting soil type, particular subtype of the place and a wine style. So the De La Riva really kind of resonated with him because that's what he's trying to do now. But here's a producer that was doing that even before it was popular to do so back in the 1800s. And comes Ramiro Ibanez, which is born in 1980, so he's about 45. He's a native of San Luca de Barrameda, and he worked in Bordeaux before returning home to become head winemaker at the local cooperative. So working at a cooperative, having to work with a lot of different small producers, gave him access to hundreds of small growers and different parcels and kind of a really deep knowledge of the region's terroir and different sites and vineyards. So essentially they both have a separate vineyards that they make wines in, and they have their own projects. But they met studying enology back when they were students. They worked together in Australia, in California. And this is in one of the interviews, Willie calls their relationship brothers and partners in personal exploration. And they're also writing a book together now, doing a deep historical account of 19th century Jerez winemaking, the era when the solar system was invented, Palomino spread across the region, and the modern sherry classification system was developed. I mean, talk about geeky nerdom at its finest, but sounds interesting. I would love to read it. Anyways, so in 2017, they decided to kind of combine their skills and the money and resources together, and they bought the rights to the De La Riva name from Beam brand and began what they describe as a wine archaeology. It's like basically tracing all the solares from long defunct wineries, recovering barrels that were given as payments for debts in the 1980s and never touched since, buying the rights of Solaris from the region's smallest producers before they disappeared forever. So the whole idea is they're going out and discovering all these small, almost defunct old producers and these barrels that have just gone untouched, and then buying them, and then blending them and aging them further to create kind of revitalize this the region and the site-specific kind of winemaking through the name of the original person who did it, was Manuel Antonio de la Riva. So I think it's a kind of a cool story. So they don't own any vineyards, they don't do any farming, but they're actually buying wines from these small producers that are almost on the risk of extinction, essentially. In one of the articles I read, they actually said the aim of this project is to have fun and do things together and to preserve the rarest, most site-specific expressions of what Jerez and Sanlúcar can produce, is what they said. So I think it's a pretty cool project. Anyways, so what is this wine? This is 100% Fino, like I mentioned, from Manzanilla. So Manzanilla Fina from Miraflores, Baja. Vineyard. It's aged 3 to 3.5 years under floor. So we're talking about, so by law, you don't, in order for you to put Manzanilla Fina on there, the minimum aging requirement is 2 years. So, but this one is aged 3 to 3.5 years in the Solaris system. And then it was originally from the old Luis del Rio winery. And then everything else, I mean, we already talked about. Essentially, the winemaking is exactly the same. So it's just essentially base wine, fortified, floor develops, grows the floor, and then aged for 3.5 years in the Solaris system. Saka takes place, and then bottled and sold out. Is essentially what we have here. All right, I've been talking a lot. Any questions about any of that? Really? No questions?
I didn't understand any of it well enough to have any questions about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, this is not.
Yeah, that's not about you. It's just about my level of fatigue. I tried to do note, and I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Barrels.
Just know that this is basically anaerobic aging under the layer of floor. It's the most important. If you take away one thing out of all this, is that sherry. There's a Fino style, Oloroso style. This is a Manzanilla is a Fino style from Sanlúcar de Villarriba, Barameda, and this is done completely under floor, which meaning non-oxidative, completely anaerobic.
Is that the same or similar as like is it Jura or Savoie with the Vin Juan, the yellow wine?
Vin Jaune, yeah. So Savoie, there is not fortified. So
Yeah,
Jura,
but it is the anaerobic thing. That is exactly the commonality. They just have not bumped it up like they do in Jura. Okay.
Right. So yeah, but the idea of making wine under floor is the same. It's the Jura is obviously made in Jura, and then it's not fortified. Any other questions?
Can you go over why the floor develops uniquely on this style and why not in other typical winemaking?
In any other winemaking?
Yeah.
So those what I mentioned earlier. So in order for floor to develop, there are like very specific conditions that need to be met. So the alcohol percentage has to be like right on that 14.5 to 15.5%. If it's anything lower than that, there can be other bacteria that come in, kills off floor, and the floor just doesn't develop. If there's anything more than that, it's just too high for floor to exist. The humidity matters a lot. So this area is there's a constant humidity that kind of comes in, and also in Jerez as well. Certain amount of heat. So all of that kind of combinations of those things have to exist at the same time for the floor to develop. It's kind of like the same reason why like botrytis, the noble rot that's used in making like Sauterne or great dessert wines, those things are only developed in certain vintages because the conditions have to be right. It has to be like foggy.
Is it typically like hot? Like, is it
Yeah,
like
exactly.
they're not like down in a cave and it's like,
Correct.
55, 60 Fahrenheit. It's up in the atmosphere. It's up in, it's hot.
Exactly.
It's a
Exactly.
hot,
They're
it's a
actually,
hot
like an
fermentation.
open warehouse when you look at it.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Are there specific brandies that are favored for fortification of this kind of wine?
So they usually make their own spirits. So there's actually a brandy that comes from Jerez region called Brandy de Jerez. So now there are people who specialize in brandy de Jerez and they only make that. But back in the days, it's probably they used the unaged spirit base to fortify the wines, and whatever was left over or whatever was quite better than the other, they would age it in barrels and make it.
So are any of these producers bottling and selling brandy as well, or just using it for
Yeah, it's big houses. Like, so these guys don't, but the big houses, they may have some. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like Hidalgo, Lustau, those guys have them, right? For sure. Any other questions?
Can you tell, I think you mentioned that some of it is not fortified because like the alcohol percentage is able to get up high because it's like really sugary grapes. Can you tell that, or is it just like if it converts to alcohol, it converts to alcohol, like, or is there a taste difference?
So yeah, it's very rare it happens because oftentimes most just yeast dies off right around like 16%. It just can't survive that high. Like they can't survive 17% and all that. But in certain situations with certain grapes, it can happen. Oftentimes the Pedro Jimenez grapes, which is the one that's used for making really sweet, the dessert sherries. And then once that's grown in Montilla Morelos, which we have a bottle of later this month. The Oloroso is the Pedro Jimenez Oloroso from Montilla Morelos. They, in that region, can get they can make quote unquote sherry. Technically, it's not sherry, it's a sherry's cousin, but it's essentially the same method as you would find in Jerez, but they're doing it in the neighboring region. And because they can develop so much sugar and then also type of yeast and then everything that's found there, they can actually get it up to that high there. But in Jerez, it's very rare that you're going to find unfortified sherry. It's just the yeast just can't can't survive at that high of alcohol. Any other questions? Okay, let's taste the wine. So considering it's a 9:32 now, Sam and Annie, usually I'll go through this myself to explain each part and all of that. But in the interest of time, we're going to do what we normally do, which is we pick somebody out, each person takes a section, and then we're going to go through it. So we're going to go through it as we normally do. And then next week, now that I've gone through like the basic coverage of sherry, it shouldn't take me this long to go through all of it. So next week, I'll go through the actual grid and explain how everything works. But I mean, you'll get an idea of how this works. All right. Who wants to take the appearance?
I can.
All right.
Hey, real quick, can you tell me what wine we're drinking? I can't get my email to load on my iPhone.
All this time, Charles. We are drinking M. Aunt de la Riva Manzanilla.
Perfect. Thanks, man.
All right.
It's clear.
Let's see this. All right. Start from the top. Yeah, this one is clear.
Okay.
By the way, so sometimes this has become hugely popular in like last 10 years or so, but sherries, you may see like Manzanilla or Fino en Rama, ENRAMA, en Rama. It means unfiltered. So oftentimes they'll take the wine, saca out of the last criadera, and they will not filter it. This one is obviously not. This one has been filtered, just so you know. All right, but this one is clear.
It is.
Intensity.
Intensity. So are we on a white wine scale or?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say this is probably like medium, maybe
Yeah.
medium minus
I'd
medium.
say it's like medium. Yeah, definitely medium. It's got some color to it for sure.
Yeah.
What's the color?
Color, I think, is very gold.
Yeah, it's got some gold flex to it. So this is actually more gold than I thought it was going to be. So usually with the Fino, you get a lot lighter color. Fino, you get pale color. You can get some green flecks sometimes. But with this particular bottle that we have here, it's got some bit of a gold. It's probably seen some oxidation. And as we will see as time goes on this month, all the color that you're going to see is all from oxidative aging. They are all white wines. The Oloroso that we get to, you're going to see it's almost like amber brown color, but it all starts off as a white wine. And that's all because of oxidative aging. When the wine oxidizes, it just turns brown. So looking at this color, looking at how much gold this is, as I feel like there's actually seeing some oxidative aging here. All right, any other observations?
No.
Yeah.
The legs don't matter. I don't see any bubbles.
Cool. Excellent. That's good to know. You got to pick the next person for the nose.
Since I haven't seen Lisa on in a while. And you guys are right below me.
Oh my God. We're not sleeping because of the baby, and we barely remember what wine is, but we will.
But we'll go for it.
We'll go for it.
This is going to be an interesting nose thing, I think. Good luck.
It's all right. I'm gonna go with clean.
Yeah, this one is clean. This one is sound.
It's pretty intense. I feel like I'm getting it like here-ish.
Yeah,
Pretty
like,
far away. Maybe that's just because it's
yeah,
fortified.
like I'm getting it like here.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. Like I'm getting it here, which is like what, like 3 inches? I'm gonna call this
Yeah.
one. It's
Okay.
very expressive.
Let's see.
Pronounced intense. Aroma is ooh. What do you think?
All right. I don't know. Maybe I could see honeysuckle. I don't know.
Do you get?
It's-
Are we supposed to do any primary flavors when it's sherry?
Yeah.
And this is a hard one. And then there's actually a separate grid. WC has a separate grid for fortified wine. I should probably look that up. But for all intents and purposes, we can use this one. But
Yeah.
see if
Okay.
there's anything.
There's a reason I volunteered for the.
The easy part.
Ollie, tell us what you smell.
Do you get any floral notes?
I thought honeysuckle, but maybe I'm just making that up. There's something like very sweet that I'm smelling that's kind of like nectary, but I don't know if that's just the sherry
What
itself.
about vanilla?
I
Or
could see vanilla.
no, not vanilla.
I don't know.
Butter? Can we do butter? No.
Let's start from the top and we'll work our way down. Do you get any floral?
We're skipping ahead.
All right. You thought there was honeysuckle?
Yeah. And then I thought that for the, yeah.
Yeah, I got some like, there's something like to me, there's some like a chamomile notes on here.
Oh.
Yeah, some sort of like a dry flower kind of a thing going on here.
Oh, look at you. What about
See?
what about dried cooked? Do you think there's some like dried fruit? No? Maybe.
That's later.
Oh.
You're skipping ahead, Lisa.
You know what?
All right. So then we green fruit. I don't think I really get any green fruit. Like maybe like dry or jammy, but nothing like bright and green.
Yeah, I get a little bit of like a little appley, maybe like some like a little bit of like dried yellow apple, something like that. But yeah, I feel like I get a little green fruit, but not like huge. Any citrus fruit?
I defer to you.
No, I defer to you.
No, I don't know.
Maybe like some lemon, like some like kind of like the like miry lemon, like
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like
Again, like preserved lemon, Meyer lemon,
Yeah, I like
dried like lemon peels,
yeah.
all that for sure. Any stone fruit, tropical?
I could see apricot.
You can see apricot,
Something jammy,
jammy.
like a jammier. kind of
That
like.
gets into the dried cooked.
Yeah, I'm so like thrown by the dried cooked fruit situation. It's hard to do these.
So then, any like fresh stone fruit, peach, apricot, nectarine.
I'll do gardenia.
I don't know.
So no.
No, let's do no, maybe.
Yeah, I don't really get much of a stone and tropical. Any red or black fruit?
No.
No, me neither. All right, I know you are hinting at a lot of this. Let's talk about the nature of the fruit.
Yeah.
Is this fresh? Is this underripe, overripe, jammy, cooked? What are you getting?
I get like dried and cooked. So
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I don't get a whole lot of cooked fruit, but I definitely get dry fruit here for sure.
yeah, what would we say? Like a dried apricot? Like
Yeah, like
just
those dried apricot.
Yeah, like dried
Like
apricot.
that's like
Yeah. Yeah, I get like dry chamomile, dried apricot, dried like the apples, citrus skin, citrus peel, and things like that. Yeah. Any herbaceous, any herbal?
No, I don't think so. Any herbal?
like
I mean, you keep saying chamomile. Does that fit into herbal?
To me, chamomile is a lot more floral than it is
Floral,
herbal.
okay.
Yeah.
So no, then I guess.
I mean, it is a flower, so. Okay. Any minerality?
Maybe a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, so other things are so intensely, coming out. Like to me, on the nose, it doesn't smell a whole lot like any stoniness, but like maybe some wet stone, wet chalk, things like that. For sure.
I feel like a tiny bit on the like a backbone almost.
Yeah.
To the like dried fruit. Yeah.
Yep. Any secondary?
Yes. All right. Let's get into the fun stuff.
Yeah, these are the non-fruit stuff.
Yeah. Definitely buttery, maybe a little. Or biscuity. Biscuit, like biscuit.
Yeah, definitely. I guess something like a dough biscuit.
Yeah.
I definitely got some evidence of some leaf. And I mean, that's essentially flour is a living yeast thing, but you're staying under that for 3 years. Like the layer of the wine is in touch with the yeast for like 3 to 3.5 years. So it makes sense that why you get a lot of that kind of autolytic, doughy kind of a thing for sure. Any oak? Any of these warming spices?
Didn't you tell us it was aged in stainless?
First wine was made in stainless steel.
Oh, and then
even the later oak, those Criadera oak barrels are very, very super neutral. It's not really for flavor. It's just more for like a oxidative, like a interchange.
Because I don't get any necessarily these like oak,
but
it's like more like the first category where it's like the bread and dough kind of.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Any tertiary notes? Anything from here? Any deliberate oxidation?
Yeah, I definitely get some like sweet, it's like I think sweet is like a huge part of what this is. Like what we were saying, apricots earlier, like maybe like marzipan. I'm drawn to like where it's like
okay, so some sort of like an almond, kind of like a confectionery almond kind of thing. Yeah. To me, like there's some dried apricot here. There's some marzipan. I definitely get some like hazelnut, some green almond skins and things like that.
Yeah.
There's definitely some oxidation. So this is something maybe a touch unusual for Manzanilla. So Manzanilla is a Fino, like I mentioned. It was always done under floor the entire time. So it tends to be a lot more acetaldehyde coming out, a lot more green almond, less oxidation. But this particular wine, this producer, what they're doing is they're rediscovering these really old, near extinct bodegas and buying barrels from them that were, that they paid the people as a debt for from 1980. So they have been sitting there for a long time. So because of that, there's probably a bit more oxidation than what would have gone through a very tightly controlled Criadera phenol system. So I think that's why we're seeing a lot, like I'm getting a lot more oxidative touch on this thing than you normally would with Manzanilla. But I still get all the touches of all the phenol sherry that comes out, but I definitely do get kind of this deliver oxidation. In the Fino Manzanilla level, you normally wouldn't get a lot of this. You may get a little bit, but not as much as this. Like you will see when we get to next week and the week after, you're going to start to see a lot more of these oxidation coming out. And I didn't say this before, but like I'm calling this a sherry box month, but it's really a study of oxidation or oxidative winemaking is what this month is all about. So we're starting from the least oxidative to more oxidative next week, more oxidative the third week. The third week is going to be fully oxidized. So yeah, we're going to see that kind of a progression throughout the month. Cool. How long is the length?
Long, I think.
Oh, wait. We're not doing palette. We're doing notes. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. What do we do?
Sorry,
I don't remember anything. Okay.
Yeah, good job. You get to pick the next person for the palette.
Yay. Okay. Someone else. Sorry, I can't see anybody else. So, oh, is it the top? I apparently also don't know how to do. Oh, here we go. How about Chris?
I knew that was gonna happen. Okay. We don't have a screaming toddler. We just have a passed out baby. So we have no excuse not to do it this time. All right. The palette. Let's see. So this is, like, I would say this is dry. Would that be correct? Is that all, like, right? There's no, I mean, obviously, like, I get a lot of sweetness from the nose, but there is no, like, added sugar to bump up
Correct.
anything, right? This
is bone dry.
Yeah.
I mean, so by law, this Generoso style sherries, which are like these dry. So there's also sweet style of sherries where the must or cooked must is added back on after the wine is finished. I'm sure you've heard of, like, when we are thinking about that, the grandma style sherry, we're talking about like cream sherry, pale cream sherry. That's what that is. So pale cream sherry is you take the finished phenol and then you take the unfermented must, or you take the must, which is unfermented grape juice, you cook it down and turn it into syrup, and you add that back in. That's basically cream sherry. So cream sherry is made from Oloroso sherry with the must added in, and then pale cream sherry is a phenol sherry with the syrup added back in. So those are distinctively sweet. But the Generoso style, which are all the the wines with the no sugar added, they are bone dry. In fact, by law, it has to be under up to 4 grams per liter of sugar, which is pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
So this is bone dry. It's not just a perception, like it's not just telling you it is literally bone dry. There's no sugar.
Acidity, I would say lower end to medium. You know, like I get a little bit, but I think some of that is just the, like, I feel like I'm getting more of the, like, oxidation, like, roundness in my mouth, as opposed to like, it's not the, like, back of the jaw sharp.
Yeah, I'll call this about medium. Yeah, nothing crazy high. And sherry, and that's the big distinction between sherry and the rest, like Madeira, for example. If I was wine tasting all this, sherry, for example, I mean, it's bone dry to begin with, so that's the difference. Madeira can be bone dry as well, but it's oftentimes has some sugar. But Madeira has a searing acidity, like high acid, and sherry tends to be somewhere between medium to medium plus acid. So it's just a little bit lower acid, especially when you're talking about two fully oxidized style, because Oloroso sherry and Madeira can be very similar because they're both fully oxidized wines. But how you tell the difference in the blind tasting setting is that sherry oftentimes tends to be, almost always tends to be a little bit lower in acid than Madeira. So yeah, medium is perfectly acceptable.
And would a tawny port be like similar to like Oloroso or Madeira, and that the like in that fully oxidized vein?
No, tawny is not fully oxidized. It can be, but it's not always.
Not always. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Tannin.
Okay.
I mean, tannin we're not talking about. I mean, this. There's no skin contact or nothing like that here. Alcohol. What do you think the alcohol is?
I had looked at the bottle earlier, so I know it's 15%. And I guess right by definition, since we are talking about a sherry of this style, we kind of know it's in there. But yeah, no, I mean definitely it feels hotter than, the stuff that we are normally drinking.
Yeah. So if I had to if you're taking a fortified tasting grid, looking at it, alcohol right here, which is fortified wines, it says right here, this 15% is actually falling on the lower side.
Okay.
You can almost get 15 and a half is probably as low as fortified wine gets. I mean, you're going to get up to 17, 18 in the medium, high is like, 16, 17, 17, 18, and then high, we're talking about like 19, 20 plus is basically what we're talking about high. So when we're talking about fortified wine world, we're talking about regular dry, still a dry wine. This would be 15% would definitely put you in the high category, but with the fortified wine, this is.
Gotcha. And in a tasting or in a like exam scenario, would you be told that this was would you have to like guess that you would have to establish that this was fortified yourself to then be like on the fortified?
No, we would know because in WCT you take the exam with just the fortified wines.
Okay.
So you don't know whether it's port, Madeira, or sherry, but you know it's fortified.
But it's fortified, so you're rating it on that subjective.
Yeah. In the Court of Master Sommeliers, I have never heard of them serving fortified wines at the blind exam.
Gotcha. Yet.
Yeah, they may, but I have never heard that. Body.
It's got some body, but not.
Yeah.
I would say probably medium plus.
Yeah, I'll call this about medium myself.
Yeah.
This wine is actually, I don't know, maybe it's drinking a lot more like a Henneth than it is drinking like a Manzanilla right now. But yeah, it's got some weight. Fino can get even lower. Manzanilla can be usually a little bit lower. I would expect like medium minus. But yeah, I'll call this a medium.
The style, the like typical of the style, you would expect it to be lighter, whereas it's just a heavier example of.
Exactly.
Okay.
Moose, we don't have to talk about flavor intensity.
I think medium plus to pronounce. There's a lot going on.
Whether you like this or not, you cannot argue that this wine is not expressive. I mean, it's intense. It's not a quiet wine. I would also call this intensity pronounced. Flavor characteristics.
Intense aromas of I get the the floral that that Lisa called out, like the cooked apple, the like candied lemon peel, Meyer lemon stuff. Not fresh citrus. Apricot, definitely not really tropical fruit. No red, no black. It's definitely lives in the fig. I don't know if I have tasted like an actual prune, so I'm basing that on like prune juice. So but that sort of cooked stewed fruit, not really much. I don't taste any herbaceousness. The herbal, no. But yeah, and then like the secondary, I think some I like some of the, yeah, I definitely get some of the like warming spices. I don't know if I would be like, pick out clove, nutmeg, or any like specific thing, but I get that sort of like a spicy warmness. Um, yeah, I don't get any like toast cedar, no wood, chocolate, no. So I don't get any like biscuity brioche or butter cheese, but does MLF happen in sherry?
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to happen just because it's not temperature control. They're just out in the ambient temperature. Yeah, it's pretty much all sherries will go to full malolactic.
Maybe I don't like. I feel like I don't. I might get now that I'm like the like yeasty stuff, but not
Yeah.
in the way that I typically like. I feel like normally when I get that, it's like when you open or like uncover bread that's like proving and you smell that.
Yeah.
It's like that very like. But this is more. Yeah, I don't know, like pastry dough.
Yeah, there's some dough. Yeah, I get that dough quite a bit, honestly.
Yeah.
Uh, and then any oxidation, the tertiaries?
Well, yes. Let's see. Um, I think we have kind of already kind of called this out, the like dried apple. You scroll down a little bit. I'm screen sharing and I can't really see or a screen mirroring. I can't. There we go. A little further.
It says fires it goes down.
Let me zoom in. Okay. Yeah, the marzipan, definitely get that. Like almond and marzipan, dried apricot, dried apple, fig. Um, that's kind of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like a lot of you guys are getting like a dried fruit. I don't get a whole lot of a dry like prunes or figs or that route. I mean, it's still very much in the citrus, light green fruit, that route, and then some chamomile. But I definitely get that a lot more delivered oxidative kind of winemaking than I would expect from Manzanilla, but I definitely get some here. It definitely gets some of that like hazelnut, marzipan. I totally get that almond, some of that touch. And you'll see it's going to get a lot more pronounced as the weeks go on, as the more oxidation comes in. All this toffee caramel that we're talking about, you're going to see that in the third week. You're going to see a lot more of this darker walnut, coffee, these kind of things coming in next week. But more than anything, that I mean, because you can't taste or you can't smell it, what I'm getting on the palate that's different from on the nose of what everything that you guys have all pointed out is the salinity. And that's the telltale marker of Manzanilla compared to Fino. There's a lot of salinity, like there's a lot of saltiness running through, but there's also a lot of umami in this wine. And this makes the white people at WCT fucking blow their goddamn brains out. But this is why my mom, every time she tastes sherry, she's like, this is soy sauce. And because I get it, because for her reference point is that she got that salinity, something fermented, and ton of umami. And to me, there's some of that running through here. They're like ever so light, kind of like a garum, not fish sauce, but like that fermented kind of like a umami, salty product. Like there's some of that reminds me of that running through here. So yeah, but I definitely want to at least point out the salinity. Like it's briny, it's salty, and it's part of the reason why this is like such a good pairing. Like anchovies, olives, Malcona almonds. I mean, like it all makes sense, right? Like you think about all those things that the Spanish eat in the Mediterranean, like a tapa style. And then now that we've described the wine and tasting notes, like these are like pretty much like right on top of each other. Like there's a reason why this makes sense. you know. Cool. Finally, the length.
Yeah, I mean, it sticks around, but I feel like not as long as I would expect given all the things that are going on. I would say
No.
medium.
I'll push it to the medium plus. Like I won't go all the way to pronounced, but it's right on the medium plus. Yeah, there's some we'll taste later that I had some wines that I was like, what? How does this finish still going on? We will get to the wine that you can be like, wait. I always like I thought I knew what long was. Like now I know what long is. But this is still persistent. I'll call this at least medium plus. All right. But yeah, we call pronounced on both on the nose and the palate in terms of intensity, and then the finish we're calling it medium plus. All right, bring it home for us. How good is this wine? Justify it, and would you age it?
All right, so it is balanced. We said it was medium plus on both intensities. It is complex.
Wait, intensity-wise, we call it pronounced on the nose, pronounced on the palate, right?
Yes.
And then
yeah, so
complexity?
Pronounced intensity. I would say pronounced complexity. We have things from like many things in every primary, secondary, tertiary.
Yeah, we got a lot going on there.
Medium plus finish. So I think that is we're getting into outstanding territory.
Yeah, we're landing between medium plus and outstanding, more towards outstanding, and being a generous taster we are, we're going to go to pronounce outstanding. So we're going to call this wine outstanding. But if you landed at very good, I think that's perfectly reasonable. And then would you age this?
So I feel like if this was a regular wine, I would have said no, because there's not high acidity, or we call it medium acidity and low tannin. But this isn't a regular wine, and I feel like it would lend itself to aging.
Quite frankly, sorry, Chris, sorry, but yeah. It's actually not the right thing. This thing would not even exist with sherry or with a fortified wines quite a bit. But the especially with the sherry, is because it's just a non-vintage blended across. It's already been aged all the way through.
Yeah.
So these are not like meant to be. They're basically being released when they consider to be the right age. It's already aged.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So the idea of it, like sitting in that, and sure, like the port and tawny are some of the longest aging things, and they can go on. But with the sherries, you're rarely gonna, particularly at the Fina level, you're rarely gonna talk about laying it down for a long time. I don't think this wine is gonna fall apart anytime soon, given all the kind of things that are already going on. But I mean, with a medium plus acid and whatnot. But yeah, we don't necessarily have to spend so much time about.
So it would be.
So drinking now.
Drink now as potential, like it's not. If it's not going to fall apart, you can hold on to it. But it's
exactly don't lay it down with the purpose of improving it over time. Like you can drink it over the next 3 to 5 years without this falling apart. Perfectly fine. But the sherry is meant to be. It's already aged and it's being released at the time of they consider to be well aged. So
gotcha.
Perfect. Cool. Good job, everyone. I know that was difficult because there's probably, for most of you, there was no reference point for wines like this. This is not something that we normally taste a lot. This is something probably very new, but at the same time, it's very fun and exciting for that reason. It's like the beginner's eye again. Like we're seeing something completely different, something new. But yeah, so there it is. Did you guys like the wine, by the way? Just out of curiosity. Allison still so.
Wasn't our favorite.
Sorry, Sarah.
Oh, it was Andrew, but yes, neither Andrew nor I were giant fans of this one.
Are you guys eating anything with this?
No.
Yeah.
That's probably why we failed.
I always say, I mean, more important than any other month, if you please bring some sort of food with this month.
Andrew ate some pirate's booty earlier, but that doesn't count.
Always a good pair. But anything
It's really enjoyable with olives.
Yeah, olives, almonds. Like my personal favorite. Do you guys know what hildas are? It's a Spanish pincho or tapa. Is usually in a toothpick. It's a pickled long pepper with an anchovy and an olive. It's like a salt bomb, but it's just one on a stick. Like, it's my favorite pincho. That and a Fino or Manzanilla is like match made in heaven. Like, it makes total complete sense. So anything like briny, fishy, salty, if you like grills, sardines, anchovies, almonds, nutty is good, olives, all that tapenade, all of it is fantastic. Manchego cheese, jamon, but more than any other month, please make sure that you have some food. If this is not hitting you, this is not resonating, you're like, I don't understand why people drink this, why they like this. Try it with that kind of food, and then you will see. Like, it makes so much more sense. And also, having said that, I don't know if I would particularly recommend this particular wine, but this seems a little more robust, a little more oxidative than the Manzanilla that I would normally find. But the Finos and Manzanillas and sushi and like sashimi is also fantastic pair. Again, going back to that like umami, salinity, soy sauce, it just makes sense. So, anyways, cool. Let's play everyone's favorite game. How much do you think this wine is on a retail shelf? How much would you be happy paying for this on a retail shelf?
I have like no idea how much sherry costs.
Yeah. But don't even think about it. Like, just think, well, how much would you think this would, like a wine of this quality, right? I know you don't like it. But putting aside your preference for it, like we looked at the complexity of it, expression or intensity, length, we called it very good or outstanding. So outstanding wine that has been aged 3 to 3.5 years under their control, their aging, but this barrel, who knows how long this has been around. There's probably Solera, there's wines from like, at least 20 years ago that's in there. So you get some of that in here. So all of that combined, how much do you think this wine like this would be worth it? Like, what should cost? $25, $25, $33, $20, $28, $30, $25, $25. All right. This wine on the retail shelf would be $37. Yes. So not as cheap as you guys think it is, but to me, this quality wine with 20+ year old wines in there for $37 is unbelievable. Like, where else are you gonna find 2006 vintage wine for $37?
It's also a really big bottle.
Yeah.
It's not like one of those skinny, tiny sherry bottles.
Yeah, it's very true. So usually Manzanilla and Fino will come in either 500 or 750, like regular size like this. But as it gets more oxidized, as you will see, so next week's bottle is 500 milliliters, and the week after is 375. So it's getting smaller and smaller for the next 2 weeks. But yeah, for 750 of a 20-year-old plus, obviously there's some new wines. It's an average age of the wine. Outstanding quality wine for $37. I don't know. hard to argue. It's hard to argue against sherry. I'm not saying you gotta like it, that's your preference, but it's hard to argue against what you were getting in a bottle for that price. That's what I'm saying. Okay, cool. I know there was a lot. We've gone through a long time. It's a 10:09 already, so sorry. The first one of each month is usually a long one, but after one is usually not this long. But cool. Any questions?
Yeah, how long will it stay in the fridge?
I would say, yeah, that's another thing. Keep this in the fridge if you don't finish it tonight. And I would say drink it over like the next month. Treat it like any other white wine. But yeah, drink it over next month. You are gonna. It's not that it's gonna go bad in terms of like it's gonna be bad for you, but it's gonna just oxidize more and more as time.
Do you regularly drink and enjoy white wine over a month?
No.
That seems like such a long time.
Yeah, no, I'm saying for this one for a month, but not like.
Oh, okay.
What I meant by treat it like a regular white wine, meaning like put it in the fridge, so like leave it out.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you meant treat it like a regular white wine.
Oh, no.
The fridge for a month, and I was like, I think you're doing it wrong, and you're supposed to be the expert.
Yeah, no wine. First of all, yeah, like you should not drink white wine uncorked for that long.
Yeah.
But no wine in reality lasts that long in my fridge anyway.
No.
Yeah, I meant treat it like a white wine, meaning keep it in the fridge, don't leave it out. But enjoy this over next month or so. It should be fine. It will get a little more like nutty, a little more oxidized, but yeah. Any other questions? Concerns? Disagreements? Cool. Hearing none, I'm going to stop the recording.